Hello there, this is RN Drive. I'm Patricia Karvelas. What does it take to be the best in the world? Not necessarily the best athlete or the best CEO, but the best at whatever you do, whether that's driving a taxi or guiding toilet tours. Coming up in the drawing room, a filmmaker who's been travelling the world to find the people giving it their all, people who are effectively the best at what they do. That's coming up in about 10 minutes from now. This is RN Drive, coming to you across Australia, online and the Asia Pacific. What does it take to be the best in the world? Not necessarily the best athlete or the best CEO, but the best at whatever you do, whether that's driving a taxi or guiding toilet tours. Joshua Belinfante is the director of a new documentary called The World's Best Film, and he's my guest in the drawing room. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Patricia.
Take us into your own story first. You always wanted to be a filmmaker, but you almost became a solicitor instead. What happened?
Yeah. It was quite a journey, I guess. Growing up in an immigrant family, I was always told, go and pursue an honest living and go put something to put bread on the table. And I think I kind of wanted to change the world. And I thought, I'll go and become a solicitor and do that. And then I guess I did that. And then I kind of realized the practice of law and the dream of changing the world are kind of two different things. And I guess that's kind of, where that started. But while I was studying to become a solicitor, I was also always making films. And since I was a kid, I've always been doing that.
So how did your family respond to you going back to filmmaking, given the pressure to have a more sort of stable, serious career?
I think my mum will kill me for kind of saying that, like, she forced me to do law or something.
Mm-hmm.
She definitely didn't. But I think her parents kind of always wanted her to become a lawyer. But I think because of the time, she didn't have the luxury of choosing the path that she took. And so she, kind of found her way into social working. So I guess she was always really supportive of me doing whatever, my heart desired, I guess. And I guess I was in a really privileged position to be able to do that in some ways because my parents worked so hard. But they were always kind of adamant, it's really important that you have a backup plan and you go and do that. So I definitely did that. But I did both things at the same time. And I guess, my dad probably would have wanted me to also take over his business, which is very much not making films. It's chartered accounting, which is very different. So, they kind of balanced each other out. And I was really thankful that I had, that experience.
It wasn't just a question of changing your mind, though, right? You had a health issue that really made you think about your choices.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it all kind of happened in 2014 after I'd actually finished studying. I went and, did my practical legal training. And it was in the middle of a lecture that I actually received a phone call that kind of changed my life. I was told that I had to stop everything that I was doing and get in an ambulance and go to the hospital. And I thought it was a joke and I didn't really understand why. And they said, you've got something inside your chest. You need to get there right away. And so I did. I found my way to the hospital and I was in to see a specialist instantly. Thankfully for Australia's medical system. And they said that I had a lung capacity of my breathing capacity was about 30%. And I'd been living with a collapsed lung. And the specialist said, if you're studying, stop that. If you're working, don't do that. And if you're doing anything at all, just stop, stay inside and do nothing. The next period is going to be very important, but you've got some people around you that are trying to make sure you're as comfortable as possible while we work out what this is.
That must have been so scary and shocking. How did you deal with it at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just everything kind of goes numb when you receive something like that. You think you're healthy, and I'd been ignoring a lot of warning signs because I've been working so hard and really actually spending time on things that didn't really matter to me that much. Like in my heart, I always kind of really wanted to be spending my time doing the things that I wanted to be doing, which was making films. But I was pursuing this other career, and in that moment, I kind of just kept thinking, is this it? Is this the end of my life? And I thought about, all the things that I'd leave behind and all the family and friends. And I realized that if I somehow overcame this, that I wanted to stop wasting time on the things that didn't matter, stop worrying about small things, and really focus on doing the thing that I really wanted to do, which was travel the world, meet as many interesting people as possible, and make the world's best film that I could.
So from there to recovery to you actually making this decision to make this film, when you realised you wanted to make this film, what did you want to do with this movie? What's it about?
Yeah, I think for me, when I was, lucky enough to be recovering in an ICU bed, I was just really thinking about going back to Europe where I'd spent some time and retracing some of my own family history. My grandparents were Polish and they fled after World War II to Australia, like many families around that time. And I think it was really important for me to kind of reclaim some sort of story, and actually go back and see the world that they came from because they're no longer around. I had so many questions for them. And it was also really important for me to just meet people face to face in quite an organic, grassroots, human way, that I was just kind of trying to create these connections with people very quickly. And, I'd arrive in a country and I just start asking questions going, who's doing something exceptional here? Who's doing something really strange and out there? And are they actually pursuing their passions and doing the thing they love? Or are they perhaps not doing the things they love? Maybe something could come from that.
The focus of the film is the best in the world. What did that actually mean to you? What were you actually looking for? It's about that passion, isn't it? Not always a skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of just comes from, I talk a lot about I think a lot about survivor guilt of, being descended from people that survived the Holocaust, that when you grow up, you're kind of told to spend your time on something valuable, that your contribution to the community and the world around you should be something great. So you have to be the best, you have to really try your very best, whatever that is. And my mom always kind of said that to me growing up as well. So I was kind of interested if other people have had that experience of just, pursuing their passions, not necessarily being like the Guinness World Records world's best, but being their own personal best, and kind of just saying, well, if all these naysayers around me are telling me not to do something, well, maybe that's going to make me do it even more. And maybe that's going to motivate me to actually even be my own personal best and be under construction and just constantly working on what it is that you love.
So introduce us to some of the people that you met. And let's start with the film begins then in Stockholm and a friend of yours who's frustrated by the town planning.
Yeah, it all kind of really started in Sweden for me, because I was, I studied over there on and off over a number of years. And that was really the first place that, once I got the okay from the doctors, I said, I'm going to go back, I'm going to see my friends. And wouldn't it be great to tell a story about a seemingly perfect city like Stockholm, where when you think of Stockholm in Scandinavia, you kind of go, this is a perfect place. There can't be anything wrong here.
Yeah, they're so happy there. Everything functions.
Everything functions. It's all great. But when you get down to the kind of the brass tacks of it all, you kind of realize, well, there are some problems around here. And that's kind of when I met this amazing individual called Björn Lindqvist, who's this very mysterious grey-haired character that had been placing signs all around the city saying requires review on less than perfect infrastructure. And I thought, well, this is amazing. I'm from a city of Sydney, which also had a lot of problems around that time with, wayfinding and public transport being knocked down and rebuilt. And, the city was quite chaotic. So I thought, well, I thought Sweden was perfect. Let's talk to this guy and find out.
Where did the stories come from? How did you find these incredible people?
I literally would arrive in a country most of the time and just start asking questions and really just throw myself in the deep end. And I really just embraced culture shock and all of the kind of subtle nuances that go along with that. Sometimes they were people that were already in my life, so I thought that was quite important. But most of the time, it was just finding people that really resonated with this idea of being the best, even if they weren't necessarily the world's best. They were kind of on board with it, going, I see what you're getting at here, that, in striving to be the world's best, you might just kind of be great, and that can be enough. And so I found all kinds of people, but then also in the process of finding new people, I kind of was also reflective, going, well, I already know a host of people that are already doing amazing things around the world. And one such person was Madi Slabaku, who's an amazing Romanian puppeteer who actually trained me in puppeteering once upon a time. And I thought that perhaps talking to her would be quite meaningful as well, because, she's obviously senior to me and that was something personal to me. So somewhere along the line, I realized that the decisions I was making in finding people was also connected to my own personal life story. And it kind of dawned on me that perhaps that's something that I should have in the film. But I didn't. Definitely wanted to strike the balance that this was still very much about a cross section of individuals from around the world, and not necessarily my own story for the entire 90 minutes.
On RN, I'm Patricia Karvelas, and my guest in the drawing room is Joshua Belinfante. And we're talking about his film, the world's best film. As you said, with each of the stories in the film, you relate it back to your own life. And this is a story also about you as well as your guests. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's all about you sitting back and letting the film tell you what it needs. I know that sounds quite, philosophical, but you have to just allow yourself time. I mean, it's so hard editing myself. I would have loved to have an external editor, but because of, this is an independent film, it was just really important for me to strike that balance by just sitting on it, going away for a few months, screening it for some colleagues, getting their thoughts, and doing those test screenings to allow me to kind of strike this balance of what's the film in my heart that I want to tell that's also true to the people's stories that I'm telling, that also resonates with an audience. And it's kind of that trifecta, but you also cannot get lost in what the audience wants, because at the end of the day, it has to be your film and you have to sleep at night with it. So it was really challenging because there were a lot of emotional moments in my life that I wanted to delve deeper into, but I also was sitting there going, well, it's possibly not appropriate, because this is really a film about people striving to be better at their passions. So really following that thread and that through line and trying to integrate my own narrative throughout it was really what guided me.
How did you manage to put this together over the years? Because funding is always the big challenge for a documentary. You said you couldn't afford an external editor.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the film was completely self-financed. It was made as an independent film. I very much, I didn't know how, like, it sounds kind of shocking to say, but I didn't really know how much time I had left. And I got the okay from my doctors, but I had to do checkups each year. And so I was just kind of trying to not really wait. And I knew that if I, potentially tried to get funding and said, look, I'm going to just arrive in a country and find people organically, that would have raised some eyebrows. So I kind of thought that should actually inform the way that I make it, and keep it quite lean, and where possible, get really close friends involved and other colleagues that are able to donate their time and be on board this kind of community project. And so it all kind of just grew from there, and getting people involved, even if they weren't filmmakers or crew. It's like kind of like, hey, can you just hold this microphone while I film this amazing toilet tour guide Morris dancing, because I don't have someone to hold the microphone. And stuff like that, just not being overly precious with stuff like that. And what I discovered was that the smaller crew actually allowed for more intimate moments with the people that I was meeting as well, that they were more comfortable to kind of tell the stories that they were telling, and there wasn't this 10 people standing around kind of thing. Having said that, I would have loved to have that opportunity and the luxury of an external editor, but I didn't, and so I kind of had to make things the best I could with the resources that I had.
So, given you brought it up, I mentioned this one in the intro, so I can't not ask you about it. I mean, that would be weird, okay? Tell me about the Morris dancing Loo Lady of London.
Yes. On paper, you're kind of going, that can't be a real person, can it? And I first discovered her after I screened The World's Best Town Planner in Beyond Lindqvist in LA, and I met a producer who said, Josh, I saw your short, this short about this town planner, and I think you need to meet my friend Rachel in London, who's a toilet tour guide. And I said, this is amazing. And this was one of the rare instances where I did meet someone online and spoke to her and said, look, would you be on board with telling your story? And she said, yeah, there's actually several other Loo ladies involved who are also equally as passionate as I am about access to toilets and peeing for free in London, because it's really expensive to pee in Europe. Sometimes you have to pay. So they're completely against that. And I thought, look, this is great. And so I arranged to fly to London when I could and meet her, and the rest was kind of history, as they say. But her story really touched on a lot of issues that a lot of people wouldn't think about. Access to toilets, having safe spaces for people of neurodiversity, and also unisex toilets and things like that, and visible disabilities, all these kind of issues that come up through talking about something that on paper sounds quite silly. So that was quite amazing for me to kind of hear about.
You said that you got buy-in from people that you featured, that they understood what you were getting at, what you were trying to do with this film. But there were a few people who didn't make it into the final version because they wouldn't admit they were the best. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's so funny. What, like they were just too modest? They're like, no, I'm not the best.
Well, yeah, exactly. It was very funny because I found people that had such specific interests that I was like, there's no way someone else could be doing this. and they just weren't on board with it. So one of them that I was developing was the world's best micronation in Lithuania, and it would have been amazing, but the mayor of the micronation, he just wasn't on board with it. He was just like, I cannot admit this. I can't say this. And so it didn't quite work. And then a few of them actually made it into the film because I realized, look, there's something in this, in admitting to the audience, hey, part of this is also me just being obsessed with finding people that are the world's best, and actually they're not, and it's okay. So I interviewed several people. This man who was a medieval sword fighting reenactor, that's a mouthful. And he was, very much, no, I'm not the world's best. The world's best is actually in Bucharest in Romania, which I thought was quite funny. And he was really humble about the experience. And then, of course, filming in Poland, which was really important for me to film a story that wasn't connected to the war. I met a luthier, and just seeing him work with his violins and everything, it was just so beautiful that there can't be actually too many of those people left in the world. But he was very humble and even said he'd be a charlatan if he said he was the world's best.
Making a film can be pretty all-consuming, right? What did this project do to your own life? Was it all good?
Look, making this film was all-consuming. The reason it took 5 years was because I definitely had my own personal battles and stories and struggles with mental health. And making the film was also quite therapeutic in that it really did just allow me a process of reflecting not only on my own life, but other people's journeys, just to kind of keep myself in check and make sure that, it's okay. I'm actually spending my time on things that matter to me. And also just reminding me that, nobody's over tomorrow, and that you really have to do the things that matter now. And so it really did take so much out of me. And there were periods of time where I couldn't touch the film several months at a time, because it was just too emotional. Looking at footage of me in hospital, for example, was quite, traumatic to kind of relive. I was thankful that I kind of had that footage that my mum and brother had actually filmed, because they knew, you know what Josh is like, he's crazy, we need to document this. And, years later it became very relevant. So it was really challenging. And I had these moments where I was like, I need to document this part of my life. I need to film every part of my life. I need to film my relationship struggles with my partner. I need to film us arguing. And it just became this whole, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. It's unethical to kind of screen that for an audience potentially. And I just came to this kind of standstill where I have to strike this balance between my own experience as a person and what I want as a filmmaker. And I need to kind of separate them. And that was a really amazing lesson to learn, that there's what you want to do as a filmmaker and what you can live with as a person. And sometimes they're completely at conflicting ends of the spectrum.
How did your partner and the people around you feel about that urge to document? Because that can be pretty tricky and confronting for the people around you.
Yeah, look, I had friends who were alienated by it. I remember I went to a friend's property and brought a camera, and they were like really angry about it. I remember that when I was in a long distance relationship with my partner, Gabriella, who features in the film, that, at first she kind of didn't understand it. And even when I was first interviewing her in Sweden about everything, she was quite shy and didn't really want to be involved. And so there was that level of trust that we kind of had to be struck. But definitely, I think living with a documentary filmmaker could be quite difficult. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there possibly listening who know what I'm talking about. But there is this documentary life that we kind of talk about, that, sometimes when you are making these films where you're in it, that you do kind of have to go, well, what's the story I'm telling and how is this relevant? And make that call of, you know what, maybe I don't need to film my birthday party this weekend, because maybe I should just have a birthday party and live in the moment and put the camera down.
What did you learn about yourself making the film?
I think I very much learned that the goals we set for ourselves, however crazy they can be achievable. I think if I went back in time somehow and told Josh in the hospital bed that, in 6 or 7 years' time, you'll have a feature documentary that you've made, and you'd be doing all these amazing things, that I kind of wouldn't believe that. And I think I really learned that sometimes you just have to really stay true to what you want and who you are, and the story you want to tell. And there's going to be lots of people out there who are going to tell you no, and they're going to say, "Oh, don't do that. That's silly," or that's stupid. And there are also going to be people who aren't going to understand what you're going to do. But at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with it and stand by those decisions. So I really learned the importance of that, and also the importance of knowing myself and who I am. And that's a journey I'll be on for the rest of my life. Like most people, you're always kind of growing and being inquisitive and asking questions. And I think that's really important and really healthy.
Hey, Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Patricia.
Joshua Belinfante has been my guest in the drawing room, and the world's best film is screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. That's it for the show tonight, but remember you can find all of our conversations online. Just go to the ABC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts and search for RN Drive or the drawing room, and then follow us. Press the little star. That's how to do it. Follow us. I hope you have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow at 6. Catch you then.
You've been listening to an ABC podcast. Discover more great ABC podcasts, live radio, and exclusives on the ABC Listen app.